All right, good evening, everyone. I'll call the Planning Advisory Committee meeting to order. And any disclosure of pecuniary interest, general nature thereof. Seeing none? Okay, thank you. I've got some opening remarks. The public meeting is being heard by the City Council Planning Advisory Committee, and public notice has been given in accordance with the Planning Act. The non-elected members of the Planning Advisory Committee are Mr. John Beltutis, Mr. Tyler Fenton, Mr. Paul Jennings, and Ms. Sarita Van Dyke. Citizen appointees may ask questions and participate in the discussion in order to assist in making recommendations to City Council, but may not make motions or vote in connection with the public meeting. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Planning Committee or City Council before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of City Council or the Ontario Land Tribunal. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Belleville before the related bylaw is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party. Comments received at this public meeting, as well as written comments, will be considered by the Engineering and Development Services Department in analysis of the applications that were part of the public meeting tonight. For further information on how to provide comments to the City regarding an application from this public meeting, please email planning@belleville.ca. A recommendation report will be brought forward upon receipt of all agency and public comments in the future. Any person wishing to be advised of the Belleville Planning Advisory Committee's recommendations with respect to today's applications are requested to leave their name and address on the appropriate notification sheet located on the clipboard beside the podium. And with that, we'll move into the public meeting portion. Notice of introductory public meeting, draft City of Belleville zoning bylaw consolidation in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, as amended. If staff could present the application, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the city's new official plan was adopted by Council on November 8th, 2021, and it was approved by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing in April of this year. Following the adoption of the official plan, the city is required to update its zoning bylaws. The zoning bylaw is a legal instrument that puts the official plan into effect and provides for its day-to-day administration. It contains specific requirements that are legally enforceable, and construction or new development that does not comply with the new zoning bylaw is not allowed. A draft consolidated zoning bylaw has been prepared for the City of Belleville by Dillon Consulting, and on March 20th, 2023, a draft version of the zoning bylaw was posted on the city's website for public review and feedback. Since the release of the draft, staff have received over 60 written comments from the public, city staff, external agencies, such as Quinte Conservation and TransCanada Pipelines. The consolidated zoning bylaw is intended to replace the city's 3 existing zoning bylaws and includes major updates to modernize and align the zoning bylaw with the city's new official plan. Zoning bylaw 10245 was adopted by the City of Belleville in 1977. This bylaw generally pertains to Belleville's urban area. This bylaw has been amended over 640 times since it was adopted. Zoning bylaw 2076-80 was adopted by the former Township of Sydney in 1980. Following amalgamation of the Township of Sydney by the City of Quinte West, the City of Belleville annexed portions of the City of Quinte West, which were formerly the Township. This zoning bylaw has continued to be in effect over these lands of the former Township. This bylaw has been amended over 45 times since it was assumed by the City in 2000. Thirdly, zoning bylaw 3014 was adopted by the former Township of Thurlow in 1987. Following the amalgamation of the Township of Thurlow by the City of Belleville in 1998, this zoning bylaw has continued to be in effect over the lands. This bylaw has been amended over 530 times since it was adopted. The consolidated zoning bylaw is designed as a user-friendly document which contains plain language and modernizes terminology to reflect today's society. The consolidated zoning bylaw will implement the newly approved official plan by allowing more opportunities for additional housing, active transportation, and new types of businesses. The consolidated zoning bylaw also offers new protections for the environment, mature neighborhoods, and sensitive land uses. Staff encourage the committee and members of the public to continue to provide feedback on the draft. Staff will bring a recommendation back to the committee once all comments have been addressed. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any presentations with this one? Okay.
Good evening to the chair.
If I could just get you to activate the microphone there.
Yes.
There we go.
I just have such a loud voice. Good evening to the chair, members of Planning Advisory Committee, members of staff, and citizens that are present this evening. My name is Rory Baksh. I'm a registered professional planner at Dillon Consulting, and with me this evening is Megan Reddy, one of our planners that's been working diligently on the consolidated zoning bylaw. Before Megan starts the presentation this evening, I would just like to acknowledge what's been accomplished thus far on this exercise. And I'm going to rewind you back to Kingston, not Belleville, but in Kingston, 2001, they did a strategic plan about how to get their house in order after amalgamation. One of the things that was on their priority list was a new zoning bylaw. Kingston started a new zoning bylaw exercise in 2016 and finished it in 2022. The City of Belleville has started a zoning bylaw exercise last year, and the end is in sight. And that is quite a significant accomplishment that this municipality is able to put its mind to getting something done and working towards seeing it achieved. And that is really something that we as a team serving the city are very proud to be part of. Before I hand it over to Megan, the other thing that I think is worth mentioning is while the end is in sight, our minds and our ears are still open and still ready to listen. So we know that there's members of the public who want to provide feedback. We're happy to hear that feedback. We're happy to work with everyone to try to make this a really good zoning bylaw by the time it comes forward for Council's ultimate adoption. With that, Megan, can I turn it over to you?
Thank you. So since project kickoff, a number of technical briefs, discussion papers, and topic-specific reports and reviews have been completed. A comprehensive list of these reports can be found in the staff report. In addition, a total of 4 public information centers were held throughout this process, including 2 held earlier this year, 1 in April and 1 in May. Public comments have been accepted and tracked throughout the process and have all been considered for inclusion in the new comprehensive zoning bylaw. Currently, the work to date has brought us to the 3rd and final phase of the zoning bylaw review. So a draft comprehensive zoning bylaw and mapping have been prepared and is now in the statutory process. This meeting is an important part of the statutory process, and we will have time for comments at the end of this presentation. For context, zoning bylaws are regulatory documents that implement the policies of an official plan. As the name implies, they are law. The zoning bylaws implement land use, locations of buildings and structures, the type and use of those buildings and structures, and lot size, parking, heights, and setbacks, all in support of official plan goals and policies. This project has intended to do 3 things: to implement official plan policies, as previously described, consolidate the 3 existing zoning bylaws, providing harmonized provisions and definitions across the city, and to modernize the zoning bylaw so that it is easy to use and interpret. This is not just limited to the style of the document itself, but in the structure of the writing and in the use of simplified language. Consolidating the 3 existing zoning bylaws, which are all over 30+ years old, has meant reducing the total number of zones applied across the city. We've consolidated 31 residential zones into 5, 21 commercial zones into 6, and 16 industrial zones into 5. The new consolidated zoning bylaw has a modern structure using tables to reduce text-heavy provisions and provide easy comparison between uses within a zone. The tables have been designed to be AODA compliant and able to be used by a screen reader, providing greater access to the zoning bylaws that was not previously allowed through the other 3. Additionally, definitions have been synthesized and now apply across the entire city. This reduces confusion in interpretation and ensures the same definitions apply to all, providing equity instead of the previous 3 sets of definitions. Zoning standards across the zones have been updated to support current styles of development and aid planning staff in the review and approval of applications. Additionally, these new standards will reduce the need for minor variances. And a mature areas overlay provides additional control to staff in areas with traditional building styles. I'm now going to hand it off to Rory to discuss some specific matters that have been brought to our attention through the process.
It's not surprising for this exercise that we've come across some modern issues, things to be looked at, housekeeping matters. In the various zoning bylaws that I've worked on, this is part of the course of doing a zoning bylaw, because communities are dynamic and ever-changing, and the regulatory tools that we use to implement planning need to move along with those changes and those trends. And so some of the things that we've put our mind to are matters such as you see on the screen: accessible parking, backyard hens, shipping containers, railway provisions. These have all kind of emerged as we've been doing the work, and I'd like to share with you a few of these perspectives as it relates to bringing a new unified zoning bylaw that is also modern to bring that forward for the City of Belleville. So it is really important that we make provision for accessible parking. One, it's the law. There are provincial requirements to provide accessible parking, but also it's good planning. We need to ensure that as mobility needs change, as communities change, that we are able to meet those needs appropriately. We are currently in a process of making sure that these accessibility requirements are well calibrated and properly refined and suitable. We have a draft in the version that is currently before the committee and the public, and we will continue to work on getting those right-sized as we finalize them. But I think we're off to a good start there. Working in parallel with us in the zoning bylaw exercise was engagement on some other matters that were of interest to the community and to the city. Matters such as shipping containers. You may have heard a lot of buzz about all these kind of different uses for shipping containers and what we should be doing with them in any municipal jurisdiction. Question about parking of recreational vehicles and similar type vehicles has come up, and backyard hens. So the work that Planning Solutions did brought forward some perspectives which have now been incorporated into the draft, with an understanding that this is still a draft. And again, as you've heard me say, we're still open to receiving feedback and continuing to work with the city and citizens to refine it. So there's, in this draft zoning bylaw, means to allow shipping containers. So for example, out in the rural area, if you need a shipping container, you want to use it for a storage purpose, that's quite similar, for example, to having a shed. Absolutely no problem. As it relates to backyard hens, there are requirements for that. So if somebody that lives in the urban part of the city and wants to have backyard hens, we provided allowance for that with appropriate restrictions that are modeled after what other communities are doing that make that still suitable in an urban context, so that it doesn't suddenly turn into agriculture. It's the type of thing that would be appropriate, an opportunity, for example, to gather eggs, but not really much else, because at that point then it becomes agriculture. We did learn from Planning Solutions, and again, it's my experience that municipalities do have, within the extent of their parking requirements, regulations for parking of recreational vehicles, boat trailers, those types of things. It is quite common across Ontario, and there's a variety of different approaches that are being used. In our case, and what's been recommended is a length of the vehicle, and as well making sure that the rules in regards to what's allowed to be parked are made clear in this version of the draft. One thing that is a little bit different is some municipalities have in their zoning bylaw a strict rule in regards to what is considered the seasonal parking, and so in a period of time they're a little bit more relaxed, and then during another period of the year they're very strict. In this case, there is nothing seasonal. It's just generally the allowances granted. We understand that we may want to hear from some other perspectives in that regard, and again, we're open to hearing from those other perspectives. We will receive all comment from this point going forward. We have actually received a number of comments through staff. Staff have been excellent partners on this exercise in receiving comments and then funneling technical experts and providing support on this exercise. We will consider all further comments that come through, make revisions as appropriate to, again, produce a modern, up-to-date, current zoning bylaw that is useful for the City of Belleville going forward, and that will be accompanied with a recommendation report ultimately for this municipality's approval. And with that, we very much thank you and welcome any questions that you may have as it relates to the draft zoning bylaw or any other subject matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation and all your work. Any questions from committee members? No, I don't see any. So I'm going to open up for public comments. Anyone wanting to speak on the draft zoning bylaw can come forward, state your name, and go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Ron Marsh. I've lived here most of my life, and I'm going through a lot of traumas myself, and a lot of other people in this room are as well. Because when I speak that all of us are carrying burdens, every one of us. So I'm not speaking for myself. I was trying to get across at the last meeting a very serious thing that took place where the mayor left the room. And I was kind of boisterous, and I apologize for that. That's my fault. I don't do things like that. But I had no choice. I look at it myself as running away. He knows me. He knows who I am. And I know who he is. But that's not the point. The point is we have to come up with some kind of a settlement where we all can benefit, not just one side. And I'm asking here, and so I won't take up too much time from you people, is patented land is very serious, extremely serious. As a matter of fact, patented land goes back when I was here last week on the 28th. You stand up and you have to thank the Algonquins for being on their land. That's patented land, unceded before the Queen arrived to Canada. I'm standing here and I'll do everything I can to see to that the patented land is kept in contact. Because where I moved and where a partner of mine that I have right now moved, we've been fighting for 38 plus years to put this end to beating up on people who have patented land before the Queen arrived. It has to stop. We know that. Gating can take place on these things. You don't have to put the people out of their homes. There's ways of doing it to be easy on people without damaging their home and damaging their lives and people that are involved in it. We've got to find a way to stop damaging people because the king wants it this way. This book here that I have, there's only 3 of them in Ontario. It's in the Senate. These are laws, not acts. So I'm known as a paper terrorist, and I'm glad I am, because I'm trying to help my daughter and other people, not myself. I'm not greedy, and that's what runs everything. Greed runs everything. These people are on the street, half of them are completely innocent. I worked in a prison for 5 years.
Mr. Marsh?
And so
Mr.
therefore,
Marsh?
all I'm going to do is not say anymore. If you don't want me to talk anymore, I'll stop.
No, I'm just going to try to keep you on topic. So this is about the zoning bylaw.
Yes, okay.
And so if you keep your comments limited to the zoning bylaw, you may proceed.
Okay. So the zoning bylaw, all I know is that this other gentleman that I'm with right now knows that there's a development taking place on, what's the name of that road? Anyways, out in Foxborough. Mudcat Lane. It was a road that I used to be on one time when I had my wife and whatnot. But anyways, Mudcat Lane. And apparently there's a development taking place along the Moira River there, and a development going in for maybe a casino and other things, a park, whatever is being done. I just talked to the people today who are putting it in, and it's not a story, it's true. So we need to gate something here and be honest with people and stop passing bylaws without letting people know what's going on. Be more honest about it, and won't have any problems with me or the fellow that's we're working together with. We won't have any problems at all. I'm probably the easiest going guy there is in Belleville.
Okay.
Thank you very,
Thank
very
you.
much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yes. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Yes, my name is Stan McDonald, and some of you were here at the last meeting, and you'll remember, and you can reference what Ron said. To keep on topic, what Ron alluded to was land patent. When land is patented, it's non-taxable. It's also non-taxable under Section 17.1 of the Municipal Act.
So again, I'm going to
hang on.
No, I'm going to narrow your comments to the zoning bylaw. You're talking about taxation, which has nothing to do with the zoning.
Well, it does, because it connects to the land patent. That's why you don't interrupt me. It connects to the land patent, so if you're going to do something under zoning and the land is patented, you need the permission to do any local improvement under regulation 322/12 to do any modifications on property. If you don't have that consent, you're opening yourself up to a lawsuit. So it does deal with zoning, and it does deal with private property, and it does deal with the land patent. When land is patented under prior to Confederation, it's transferred or conveyed, which means if you're going to do something with the zoning bylaw or whatever, or even a planning board or anything like that, you have to have public input or public knowledge. It actually falls under the Municipal Act, Regulation 238, 239. You can look it up. And they don't have public meetings. The last meeting we were at, we were shut down.
Just to be clear, and I don't want to be argumentative, but if you've listened to the presentation from Dylan Consultant,
Yep.
There's been 4 public information meetings. This draft bylaw has been advertised and published publicly, and this is a statutory meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee under Section 34 of the Planning Act. So to be clear, this is a lawful meeting that we're conducting here, and there was a process where there continues to be consultation. So I want to correct you on the suggestion or the premise that there has not been public consultation. What we're doing here tonight is part of that process, but that consultation has occurred for some time.
In this case, yes, but in the other bylaws, all the bylaws that are passed by the municipality so far that I've looked up, which is quite a number, a lot of them never had public input. It wasn't even put in the newspaper. And when you do something, did you inform the people of Belleville, the people of Thurlow Township, that they have a right to protect their property? You can't just push the zoning bylaw through because you're dealing with patented land. This is what I'm getting at. Did you inform the public that they have a right under patented land? Their land is protected. Did you do that? Yes or no? Yes or no answer.
This is not an exchange. My comments to you are to keep you within the goalposts of today's meeting.
Right.
If you want to speak to the zoning bylaw, the podium is yours. This will not be an exchange where I'll be answering questions.
Well, it's something to think about. If you didn't inform the public that their land is patented and they have a right to object to it, then you didn't do full disclosure, which means your zoning bylaws without full disclosure, technically it could be subject to legal prosecution. The same with any other bylaw. Right? You're passing bylaws. Bylaws are a set of rules that govern a corporation. They're a corporate policy. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. But if you don't disclose to the people that their land is under patented land, and you technically can't do this unless they don't object. But for those people that do object, you have to stop and refrain from doing anything because it's patented land. And that deals with your zoning. It also deals with property standards or anything else. It deals with everything. Because the municipality is supposed to be the representative of the people. And if they don't represent the people, or if they don't follow the prescribed rules and regulations and recognize patented land, then they're operating what's called ultra virus, which makes every action they do illegal. And fraud doesn't have an expiration date. So somebody that's lived for the property for 40, 50, 60 years, once they find this out, you're opening yourself up to a can of worms. So I'm suggesting that you tell the people that they're operating on patented land before you do anything as far as changing the parameters. And in regards to the motor vehicles that the guy mentioned, under Section 50 and Section 63 of the Municipal Act, you can't regulate the licensing or parking of motor vehicles. That's consistent with Section 7 of the Highway Traffic Act. That's also consistent with a letter from the Ministry of Transport. So you do not have the authority to regulate vehicles. You don't have the authority to regulate anything in reality, because under the circumstances, the broad authority of the municipality regulates Section 9, 10, and 11. 9 deals with a natural person. One natural person can't compel another person into a contract or an obligation without their consent. 10 and 11 are both the same. They deal with economic development and certain businesses.
Mr. McDonald, I need you to speak to the zoning bylaw and the zoning bylaw only. If you have nothing further to say, I'll thank you for your comments.
What are you going to do in regards to Sections 9, 10, and 11? and section 50 and 63, as I just brought up, because that's directly related to your zoning bylaw. It was on the screen.
Again, this is not an exchange. Your comments are noted. Staff are making notes. We have the consultants present. There will be no, this is not an exchange. Do you have anything further?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Anybody else who'd like to come forward? If you could state your name, please.
Good evening. My name's Kathy Poland. I'm a resident of Belleville for over 50 years. I'm not going to say exactly how long because I don't want you to know my actual age, but that's what it is. I'm here to discuss the RV trailer 13.22 section 4. And as this gentleman said here, dynamic is ever changing. When COVID-19 came, my husband and I went out and purchased a 27-foot trailer. With the tongue, it's 30 feet. It is 11 feet tall from the tires to the top of the air conditioner. We have a beautiful house in the city of Belleville. We have designated a gravel on the side of our yard, off the end of our driveway, beside our garage, a gravel patch. It has been professionally done where we bring our trailer after we've had a camping trip. We just returned today from Algonquin Park at Rock Lake. We had a tire blowout on the way home. And thank God it happened in Bancroft. But if we were not allowed to bring our trailer back to our residence, we would not be able to take care of the damage ourselves. We would have to take it to a professional in order to have the tools readily available and to have the equipment that we need to fix it. I don't know if any of you own a trailer, but for us, we go out and we have the trailer at the side of our property. We actually put a 200 amp, got it with permits, a 200 amp service put in with a 30 amp on the back of our house so we can plug our trailer in. We allow it to cool before we get going so that our refrigerator keeps our food cold from designation A to designation B. When we come home, we again plug it in so we can clean our refrigerator, get our food out, get it restocked, get our laundry out, and give our trailer a deep clean. Again, if we were doing this off in a different storage area, that would be a little difficult. I know in the comments that this gentleman made, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, he says there's no seasonal RV. I would suggest that I would like to see the bylaw amended so that we would be allowed to park our RVs beside our house from, April 1st to Thanksgiving during that period. I think it's a good compromise. I think our trailer looks a lot better than some properties that have 2 steel trailers on their property. I keep my property well, most of my community does, and I expect by law to go and knock on my door if I'm not cutting my grass and if my trailer becomes derelict. I expect that knock on my door. I would appreciate that knock on that door. Maybe my neighbor needs help. There could be many things, but I would actually encourage that to happen. So I just want to say that I thank everybody for their time and their efforts. I know this is not an easy job, and you're not going to please everybody. I've been on that end of the stick with the business that I'm currently in, but I hope you'll consider my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Yep. If you come forward.
Had a note here. Okay, what's not coming up? My name is Jessica Crossan. I'm also a resident here of Belleville of almost 30 years. And my sister and I actually purchased properties very close to my parents in the east end of Belleville. There was a method to this. We sacrificed the amount that we were paying for our properties to not only be able to be close to each other, but to also be able to have driveways that were very close to each other. That's because my parents, who are present here today, who are now retired, that has become their passion in retirement, is camping. My father is a veteran, and he is also connected with additional veterans in this camping community, the Kente Campers, as they're called, where they do travel all across Ontario camping together. Without the ability for my parents to park their RV or trailer in their driveway throughout the summertime, it would be impossible for my parents to continue what their passion is into retirement. I personally feel that this amendment is not necessary, and it is redundant of the existing bylaws that can be incorporated into the new bylaw or the new zoning plan. The existing bylaws with respect to property standards, parking, as well as property use, already more than address the amendments that are being proposed specifically with respect to RVs and our trailers parked on properties. That's all I'm speaking about today. The length to be specified, putting a cap on the length, I think is unnecessarily, in my opinion. That's specifically what I'm speaking to. It is when you have the calculations for boat storage that contradicts the allowance for RV storage, it doesn't make sense. If I have a 16-foot boat, that is the length from bow to stern. The current amendments to the bylaw does not take into account the prop, the rudder, or the trailer additional to the actual boat itself. So if I have a 16-foot boat, I would have an additional potentially 6 feet for that front trailer coming off the front of the boat that hitches on, because hitches are also not included in the calculation, from my understanding. As well, the prop and the rudder are not in that calculation. So you could have a 16-foot boat that actually takes up 22 feet in a driveway, but a 22-foot trailer is not prohibited according to these bylaws. The contradiction does not make sense. Also, with the rising costs, RVing and camping is something that families partake in, and families, especially extended families like ours, where you have 3 families camping all together at once. That's something that we enjoy to do, and it's cost effective. We cannot enjoy the local amenities that we have in this area. We can't go to Sandbanks because you have to get a reservation weeks in advance, and when you go, you cannot enjoy Sandbanks like you used to when we were growing up. It's not fun anymore. You have to go elsewhere. And therefore, it's difficult for families to now have to put the additional cost of storage during that they would normally be able to park their trailers in their driveways in between camping seasons or camping trips, that additional cost on them. Further, the lack of storage in the city is atrocious, let alone safe storage. We have parked at every single storage facility in Belleville, been broken into in every storage facility in Belleville, and had items stolen from our trailer in every single storage facility in Belleville. We have had to go outside of Belleville and are now seeing that same problem in the Sterling area. So at home in our driveway, where we have 3 homes that have security footage and security cameras and 3 people who can jump out and see if there's anything happening, can protect our assets. We have care and control of our motor vehicle when it's in our driveway. We can't say that when it's on some other storage lot that is now continuously broken into. Further, just with respect to the comments that the gentleman from Dillon Consulting made, I think comparing Kingston's rate at amending and passing their zoning, it just shows that this amendment, and particularly rushed. This needs more time to consider the growing families and the growing uses of properties that is happening here in Belleville. Belleville is not Thurlow anymore, as mentioned. We amalgamated, and it is a different city. We have a huge influx of new families coming in. RVs are not meant to be stored and used in your driveway for residential purposes. You're not supposed to be living in them, and the current bylaws already address that. The length is irrelevant, whether it's a 12-foot small trailer that's being, as the previous woman pointed out, not properly maintained versus a 25-foot trailer that is being beautifully maintained, pride of ownership in it, nobody is residing in it. You're maintaining the property around it, so you're just increasing to your property value as well. And as well, the amendment also doesn't address the time frames. We do go on constant and frequent RV trips. So my one question is, are we not able to park our RV in our driveway in between trips? As the woman pointed out earlier, she had an incident on the road. Thankfully, that doesn't happen to most of us, but we do still need to come home, clean out our fridges, clean all the bedding, vacuum the entire trailer after a weekend with dogs in a trailer and, getting dirty. You need time to clean before your next trip. Are you not able to do that in the driveway as you have currently been able to do? And if so, where are you able to do that? Are we now going to incur additional costs of having to purchase an extra vacuum to keep in our RV, to keep at the storage facility? How are we going to get power at the storage facility to power the vacuums? So those are my comments, and thank you very much for listening. Again, I know you have a very hard job and taking a lot of comments on this, so I appreciate you listening to all of our feedback. Thank you.
Just Just before the next public comment, I just want to be clear and just let the public gallery know that there'll be some resolutions that we're going to pass tonight that's just process-oriented. There is no final decision. This committee and this public meeting tonight is to hear this feedback and then staff to take the feedback, analyze it with the consultants, come back to this committee before this committee makes a recommendation to council, which has the final decision. So this is still very much fair game and open process here. So just to be clear, there's no final decisions being made today. If you want to state your name and your presentation, that would be great.
I'm Kathy Hunt. I am from Belleville. That's my daughter, and she did a really good job. Good job, Jessica. She started to touch on what I just wanted to talk about. She didn't look at her phone, so I won't look at mine. I have had personal experience last winter. We've always parked for personal reasons, we park our trailer in a storage lot in the winter. We don't want it in the driveway. It's in the driveway during the summer. Last winter, we had an issue. We've always parked at what used to be the Carl Cox RV storage on Herkimer, just by Station Street. And it's changed owners several times over the last few years. And the last owners, the current owners, I guess, last winter when we took our trailer in, we noticed the security fence was all down, and there's a homeless encampment in behind the storage facility. And I called and asked about putting the fence back up, and I had already seen on Facebook that the cameras didn't work, the security cameras, so it's like, are you putting the fence back up here? No, they weren't planning on it, and I was told politely if I didn't like the lack of security, take my trailer elsewhere. So I went home. We left it, but it was only there for a day. I went home, called around to all the storage facilities in town, and there was one lot in Belleville that could accommodate me last winter at triple the cost of what we were accustomed to on Herkimer. They wanted $120 a month versus $40. So we ended up going to Sterling with our trailer. We took it there. I got the last spot. Our trailer is only 29 feet. It's not large. I got the last spot in a lot in Sterling. But I'm just saying that to ask all the residents of Belleville to now try and find storage, it's impossible. We do not have storage facilities in the area to accommodate all the trailers. I don't know what I'll do if you say, you know, this is the bylaw and you have to, I don't know where I'd take it. Because last winter when I just wanted it for the winter, I had to take it to Sterling. There was nothing available to park it at here. So that's just my comment that there is a lack of storage facilities and secure storage facilities around that I don't. That's it. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. McDonald, I'm going to let other people speak.
I got one comment. Anybody that's got a trailer under the planning, there's a thing called legal and non-conforming.
Mr. McDonald, I'm going to have you take a seat. If you have other comments that you'd like to provide, you can email the city, planning@belleville.ca, but in fairness to other people who want to speak, I need to move the process along.
I appreciate that, but this will
Thank you.
save everybody a bunch of time.
Thank you.
If you have a trailer, and
Thank
you
you.
pass an order, you're legal and non-conforming. It's not an issue.
Mr. McDonald, please, thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is David Burnham. To the mayor and I guess this council and planning committee, correct? I'm a new resident of Belleville. I've been here 2 years. One of the reasons I guess I moved to Belleville is I'm retired, and I wanted to use the wonderful Bay of Quinte over here as a recreational opportunity. So, like the person I am who's obsessive, I went and bought 2 boats. Right? Because I like power boats because they go fast, but I also like sailboats because I enjoy the ride. Now, I guess what I was hoping that I'd see some of the other fellow members from my yacht club here in Belleville, which I joined last year. I took the Adult Learn to Sail program. I love sailing. I'm 71 years old. I thought I was crazy right, doing it, but I'm doing it. And I guess I'm speaking on behalf of members rather than myself because I actually went this year and upgraded my sailboat from 23 feet to a whopping 30 feet which means I can't put it on a trailer. A lot of my colleagues, though, have boats that are called trailerable boats, meaning they range in size from 17 to about 25 feet. And a lot of people to date have been basically storing those boats on their own property because they can load their boat onto the trailer and then trail it to their property. And those are about 25 feet in length. Now, a 30-foot boat, I'm not talking about that because I take my 30-foot boat and it's going to be on the hard down on Victoria Point. Okay, so that's not the issue. For me, it's just basically I'm speaking now to more my colleagues who have the shorter boats and who, again, are retired people like myself. And I don't know about you, but inflation is killing me. The cost of basically storing boats at one of the marinas here has escalated tremendously. I've been here basically boating for 5 years, although I moved here for 2 years ago full time. But I'm finding the costs almost prohibitive in terms of storage costs at a marina that's secure. And like the RV people have been talking about, I've investigated most of the facilities on, I believe it's Herkimer, and I'm not satisfied that they can protect my asset either. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. The powerboat size, I have a 17-foot powerboat, and apparently it would meet the requirements under the existing bylaw or the proposed bylaw. But if I was to move up to a 19 or a 20-foot boat, which is really more appropriate, a 17-foot runabout, I'll be honest with you, that's a very small boat in terms of the Bay of Quinte. It's a safety issue. So I'm actually looking at disposing of it and trying to buy something a little bit bigger to suit my needs for fishing and other activities as well, right? So I guess the point I'm again trying to drive to is that I'm coming back to almost what the lady was talking about in the length issue. My feeling is that if something is trailerable with a reasonable height and a reasonable length, and having been trained as an urban planner some 45 years ago, so I kind of think that the test of reasonableness for me would be that if the height and the length can be accommodated within the length of the driveway that you're looking at, and I happen to live just off of College Street on Hartwood Drive and around in that area, so our laneways are quite long. We probably have significant length to accommodate a 24, 25-foot sailboat with the hitch. So the lady's concerned about the hitch. So the hitch would be beyond the 25 feet. So I'm probably up to 30 feet. Again, with the powerboat, the same thing. So I went to about a 19 or 25, somewhere between 19 and 25 feet in terms of a powerboat. And this is a runabout style boat. So we're not talking decks and going into the sky like you'll see on most of the cabin cruisers. These are basically runabouts. And what people are using them for, again, is for fishing or for, I still have adult kids and they like to water ski and they like to tube on the bay. So, I mean, I still like to offer them that opportunity and their kids in the future as well. So I guess I'm just coming back to the idea that I think the whole length issue, it's difficult to decide like what's an appropriate length, and I know that. But I think there has to be some flexibility in determining what would be an appropriate length and how you would evaluate that. And unfortunately, I know zoning bylaws are regulations, and regulations get interpreted by bylaw officers, and they stick to them. So they're out with their tapes, and they measure the length of everything. Because when I had my pool put in last year, I managed to save a little bit of money and had a little pool put in, and I went through the building process. But again, I know that, and I'm prepared to do that. But what I'm concerned about are, for example, as I say, a lot of my club members who have the smaller sailboats, which brings a lot of revenue actually to the city. They have all the shark races here in Belleville. And I'm actually on the Jubilee Committee for the 150th anniversary of the club. I got myself engaged in the community that way. And so I'm kind of excited about that. And on a regular basis, we hold these sailboat races for the smaller boats, the 21s to 24-foot boats. And people trailer them here, right? They trailer them to the club. They trailer them to Victoria Harbor. We put them in. They race for 3 days. The folks stay in town. They rent hotels. They stay with their families. You know, and we've got our 150th anniversary coming. And I know we're going to be packing people in for a lot of the events we're talking about. So I guess I'm just trying to make a pitch right now for my other club members who are not here. And I was surprised that 2 of them were supposed to be here, but I know one person, he had to go back to work to support his family, like some of us have to do because of inflation. So I thought I'd speak on his behalf as well as my own. All right. Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to remind members of the public as well, is there is a clipboard on the podium. Please add your name and your address if you'd like to be notified or recognized as being registered for tonight. So just reminding people before you leave. If the next person would like to come forward.
Hi there, my name's Julia Chappelle, and I'm a resident of Belleville, taxpayer in Belleville. Been here since I was 15, which, 12 years ago. I want to thank the camp committee. I don't think this is likely the same committee that was working on this amendment back in 2021, because we had an election, so probably new members. Dylan Consulting, maybe we're consistent, maybe they were working on it in 2021, so maybe our outside consulting firm brought the consistency. That worries me a little bit, because I know we've done surveys and things, and I just worry about consistency. But what I own a trailer. My husband retired in 2021, and we decided before we retired, we're going to get a trailer. We're seniors. We can afford a trailer more than we can afford going everywhere, so we've got one. Followed the bylaws. We're allowed to park it in our driveway. We do in the summer. As another person said, it's a nice, neat trailer. It's not derelict. Our house isn't derelict. It doesn't affect anyone. I've never had anyone come to us and complain about it. I've had people walk by, say, nice trailer, and ask about it, but I've never had a complaint. What I heard, I believe your name was Rory, say that things are dynamic. It's true. Like in 2021, when you first talked about this, we were in the midst of the pandemic. Things were the way they were, and I think everyone would agree things are different. Costs are different. The cost of travel, the cost of food, groceries, everything's changed. And it's an inexpensive, a more expensive way to travel than others. And I don't understand how it's causing a problem or how it's making Belleville better by trailers and driveways. I don't understand that at all. Not a question, because I'm understanding. My husband explained. It's just to give comments too. I see a lot of things in Belleville that I feel are affecting Belleville, and I'm not getting into that, but I just want to explain the time and money spent doing this to get trailers and other things in the bylaw being done, compared to things that aren't being done. So if someone comes to Belleville as a tourist, a visitor, when you're bringing in businesses to get them to come here and pay more taxes, we can't bring them near our downtown. We need more housing. We've got the homeless. That's an eyesore. We need help for those people. In my mind, trailers aren't an eyesore. Our time and money could be spent on something different. I just want to thank you for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chris Dunst. I've been a resident of Belleville for almost 40 years now. So we have a 24-foot travel trailer. And the main purpose of us having this trailer is we have 2 young children, and we want them doing activities that doesn't involve a screen all the time. So we purchased this trailer a couple years ago, and we keep it in our driveway all summer long in between trips, as other folks have said. Now with this new bylaw, we wouldn't be able to do that. We'd have to keep it in storage, and I don't know if we can afford the extra $120 a month to store the trailer. So if that's the case, then we might not be able to keep our trailer. We'll have to sell it, and then our children will, be stuck staring at screens or doing stuff in town, not getting out into nature, not doing the things that we would want them to be doing. Now, I think we could probably amend the bylaw though, so that it's not restricted to sizes. I understand we don't want things right up against sidewalks, tripping hazards, maybe possible accidents, but we have a 50-foot long driveway with a 24-foot trailer. It's not in the way, it's not an eyesore. I don't see why we wouldn't be able to store our trailer there. Thank you for your time today.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Ron Harris. Lived here for 49 years. I have a number of points, no particular order here, partly in reaction to a lot of things people have said, and I'll just hit on those as supportive of them. But before I start, I'd first like to thank the city and Tom. I was at one of the open houses. We had a good conversation. He asked me to put some of the points I made into an email, which I did and sent to him. And surprisingly, last week I got a phone call from him saying, I'd just like to follow up with your comments and some things that we've talked about. I found that very, very positive. And again, would like to thank Tom and his colleague who was also at the open house. But given this opportunity for a public input directly to you, to the councillors, points here. First of all, I'd also like to put it in the context of Belleville. What we have here, a city on the water, is a fairly unique thing for communities this size in Ontario. And so I think the city should be doing everything it can to help make this something for the residents to easily enjoy and take advantage of. So keep that in mind. The other question I have, and I know this isn't an interchange, but I'll leave it as a question with you. 2012, a similar proposal was made and was defeated. What has changed since 2012? A lot of things in our world have changed, but what has changed in terms of size of homes, being able to store recreational vehicles or commercial vehicles? Again, I'll leave that question for you to discuss, but at some point I'd like to know what the answer is. The other point someone made earlier, coming up with something that all can benefit. I recognize a lot of these things come up because they're complaint driven. I was in a position, had 1,000 people under me, and a lot of times people would come to me and say, oh, we need a rule, we need to change this because of that. You can make all kinds of rules, and tomorrow you need to add one more, and the day after, another one, if it's only complaint driven. So somewhere there needs to be, I think there's solutions that we can't please all the people all the time. We all know that expression. But I think there's some solutions that can be made that will enable the people of Belleville who have vehicles that are being addressed in this proposal to work with the kinds of concerns that are being presented. And at the same time, some of those people who are complaining about size of things in people's driveways, given the size, that can be addressed too. My understanding, and again, I may not be fully informed, but I think with the newer subdivisions, you have much smaller property sizes. And that presents then some problems in terms of how big of a recreational vehicle one should be able to store, as opposed to the gentleman who said he's got a 50-foot driveway. So what's the problem with putting a 25-foot boat in that? A 25-foot boat in Potter's Creek, yeah, would consume the whole driveway. Problem. So different strokes for different folks, okay? I think there's provisions that can be made that will allow those people who have a property that's an appropriate size for the size of recreational vehicle they have, with certain provisions. One being that the simple one, it must be, I think it's within 1 meter of a sidewalk. Those kinds of things would allow those who can have something of a certain size and are able to store it on their property, but also deal with those people who maybe live in a smaller lot, that it would be problematic. So certain provisions would allow those people who are able to do it without interfering with other people to do it, and those that can't do it, well, sorry, you bought a house that's this size, and unfortunately, yeah, you can't do it. Get my list back up here. The other thing, this has been expressed a number of times and much more eloquently than I can do it, but the preparation for trips. You know, having owned that, I think The lady back here said it that way. Yeah, you just don't say, okay, we're going on a 3-week trip tomorrow, we'll go pick up the RV and off we go. You got to put the food in, you got to get the refrigerator cold, you've got to get everything, the bedding, all that stuff in. It takes time. By the proposal here, as she said, you would not be able to, you would be violating a bylaw by bringing it the day before, spending the day, loading it up, and leaving the next morning and parking it overnight. And the same thing when you return. That just seems senseless to have that kind of thing, or that kind of proposal. And to have somebody say, I know I'm violating a bylaw, but what am I going to do? Okay. Length has been a constant element here in the comments, and again, I think there's provisions that can be made, because it all comes down to, I think, property size and how well does it fit on the property. But it brings up the question in my mind, where did 19 feet or 6.5 meters or whatever it is, where did that number come from? How was it determined? A lot of other communities have that. Quinte West has it, but why? Where's the number come from? What's the rationale behind it? We can come up with things, and that's not so much the issue. The issue is really the why. Where did it come from? And why is it that number? Okay? So again, something for you, Tom, others to think about. How does that apply in our particular community? Sorry, my phone keeps blanking. I gotta log in. The other issue that has continually come up, and again, I'd like to voice my support, is the cost involved. And in today's world, you listen to the news, what do you hear? It's about costs, families not being able to afford food, that kind of thing, the basic things in life. And as the gentleman here with his sons said, recreational opportunities, bringing up my kids in activities that are positive. They're not hanging out on the street or down on the corner, but showing them there's things to do that are positive. I'm very pleasantly surprised. We took our kids camping when they're younger, and now every one of them is doing the same thing with their family. They shocked us in the last 5 years when they said, remember when we went there? That's where we're going. Okay? It's not just today, it's generational. And it's activities, when we look at what's available to kids today, what you remember, what you did as a kid, it's getting involved in those positive activities. So to put an extra cost, a guy was passing in front of our place the other day, we got talking, he has a storage yard, I asked him the price. It was going to be $900 to store our RV. It's 24 feet, $900. Can I afford it? Fortunately, yes. Can my neighbor up the street? No. And as he said, if I can't afford to store it, then I got to give it up. And it's not just giving up that trailer, that boat, it's giving up a lifestyle. It's giving up a lifestyle that's teaching kids positive things to do. And the lack of storage, yeah. That's huge, absolutely huge. When I look at the number of boats, I go for a bike ride every morning. I go by the 2 boat launch ramps. I see the number of boats there every morning. I stopped the other day and I paced off the length of the average trailer. Every one of those boats and trailer that was down at the launch would not fit under the proposed bylaw. So A, all those people which I presume most of them are from the Belleville area, probably some a little further out, but probably a lot of them from Belleville, would have to A, find storage, which we heard is almost impossible now, and B, have to pay. And would they have to give up their pleasure, a positive activity, because either they can't find a place to store it or they can't afford it without giving up certain other things, food, accommodation, the basic necessities go along with it. I think of them, the guy that comes home from work, he has a boat, it's a nice evening, he wants to go out for a couple hours fishing. So maybe he gets a place to store his boat in Sterling, from what we hear that's available. So he's got to drive from Belleville to Sterling, hook up his boat, drive it back down to the launch, go fishing for a couple hours, drive back to Sterling, unhook, drive back to Belleville to go to bed for a couple hours of a pleasure. He's probably going to spend close to 3-4 hours, plus gas on top of it. Does that make sense? When we have right in our backyard that facility, that bay out there that so many people enjoy. The last point I just made a note of, and it just refers back to what I've been talking about, a lot of studies, a lot of things about mental health and people today, and the services that are needed. But with that, there's the flip side of lifestyle and what recreational activities do for people in their mental health. For a guy to come back from work, he's had a hard day, maybe a stressful day, to get in his boat and go out fishing for a couple hours in the evening and just decompress. Let's forget about having to drive to Sterling to pick up his boat and come back again. But it's bigger than just putting something on your property. Okay, there's a whole context in what it does to people. So I want you to think about that and what the implications are for these people in our community who have recreational vehicles, whether it be a trailer, a camper, or a boat, and what it does for them. So I think, summing up, I can understand some of the complaints. I look at both sides of it, and from talking to Tom here about some of them, and I think, yeah, they're legitimate. If I lived in that neighborhood, I could see where that'd be a problem. But let's not look at it in terms of no RVs, no boats, no commercial vehicles, period. Or if it is, it's 19 feet. Let's make it subject to certain provisions that allow those who have the place where they can store it to store it. And even at a minimum, if you can't come up with something like that, at a minimum, seasonal. The lady earlier suggested April to Thanksgiving. I had said to Tom, beginning of May, okay, basically when winter is supposed to be over and people can start getting back outside, make it seasonal at a minimum if you can't make it full time, to allow those people who are going to be using it. That's our prime time as Canadians. We only have a few months to really enjoy our weather. So let's not put more restrictions that prevent people from enjoying those activities, and those activities that are right in our own backyard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Bruce Carnegie. I wrote a letter to all the councillors and the mayor. I sent an email and I've actually forwarded it on to the planning committee. So hopefully a lot of what was said here today it's all there. I think a lot of it is in the email that I sent. It's been expanded on very well, I think. I'm the guy who came from Algonquin Provincial Park and had to change a tire on my trailer today. Kathy and I have our trailer, it's parked in our yard now at the side of our place. I need to be able to do a little work. I won't be able to do that if this passes. We bought our trailer 2020, just as COVID was hitting. We originally had a trailer at a site where you just don't move, right? We'd had enough of that. We wanted to move around and see the province and the states and the other provinces. Anyway, you catch where I'm going here. The trailer we bought was not with just her and I in mind. We bought it with our family in mind. We have 6 grandchildren. All 6 have been in that trailer, with or without their parents, right? So I applaud this gentleman here who very much says, you know, there are things that kids can do in provincial parks, private parks, wherever they go, that keeps them off the street, keeps them off their screens. And it's just a healthy environment. For me not to be able to do a little bit of work in my yard to keep my trailer maintained, and we keep our vehicles maintained. I don't know how many times I've been to Quinte RV here. You need to fix this, you need to fix this. Things need to get fixed. There are things that I can do that I don't want to pay. Love Quinte RV to death, but I don't want to have to pay them to do something that I can do in my driveway. Like I can change a tire in my driveway. I can change it on the side of the road in Bancroft as well. So financially, our kids can't afford to do what we do. They would love to take their kids camping. That's what grandparents do, right? That's what we're doing. So we take the kids. We camp in April. I know he mentioned maybe May. No, we camp in April. Provincial parks open the end of April. I'd like to be able to have my trailer in my yard beginning of April. The guy where we actually store our trailer, we've been lucky. We have a spot. We have a guy. Our guy says, you got a spot as long as you keep paying me. So we keep paying him. We get a spot. Like, when we're done, we will send our trailer to his spot. He's got a spot for us. I don't want his facility is not set up so that during the summer I can go park there. It's an indoor store, so I can't just go. It's a secure lot. I can't just call him up and say, hey, there's no code for. If I'm going there, I'm on his time. He doesn't do it in the summer anyway. So now where do I go? It's been said a few times, there's not enough storage spaces around. And I dare say there are far better uses for the city's land than to make more storage spaces for trailers that could easily fit in my driveway. I think I got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Forgot one point. Sorry. I understand a lot of these things come up complaint-driven.
Yeah, if you could just provide any additional comments
Yep.
via email. I just want to keep the meeting moving. I've already had other gentlemen come up and I had him sit back down. I just want to keep it flowing.
Yep.
I know there's been a lot of comments that have been made, a lot of consistent comments. Again, members of the public are welcome to provide those comments in writing. Again, staff are going to consider those, so we're getting a little repetitive. This zoning bylaw takes into consideration a lot of things other than just RVs, and I think we've got the message as committee, and I know staff have been taking notes on that. But I'm gonna just let you, if you don't mind, have a seat. You can provide your comments through to staff or to the committee and council members here. That'd be appreciated. Okay?
I understand there's a petition regarding this. Should the person, if I can find out who it is, have it sent to Tom? That's
That's fair.
Okay.
Yeah, any correspondence can go to planning@belleville.ca. Yeah,
I'm not a public speaker, but nobody's brought this subject up, so I will. I'm Diana Hutt. I've lived in this city for 50 years. I've worked here, I've raised, I've volunteered, and it's been a wonderful place to live, but not so much anymore. I'm going to be one of those not in my backyard. I don't know whether that was your comment or not. And we are having a problem with out-of-town buyers that have bought up homes in our street, and they have filled them. And it breaks my heart when I say this for these children. They're young people. They're young men. Some of them are young women. They live in horrific conditions. And I said, for us to sit here and allow that to happen is unbelievable. The police were at one of the houses 2 weeks ago, and I happened to be sitting up with my friend who lives beside the one house, and the policeman came out and said, I have never seen the likes of that. It's not the kids' fault. We've got these people that are using these young people as cash cows, and as far as I'm concerned, Loyalist plays a part in that too. It's, if you want to see, I've got an advertisement here that was advertised for one of the rooms in our house. There's 2 mattresses on the floor. I've spoken to the people because I've lived in this street for 50 years. People have moved away from it because it's the last thing they did, the gentleman took and knocked still like that. The bylaw people are familiar with it. They're there all the time. The firemen are there. This one's that and something else. I don't understand why this is happening. And then I hear comments like, not in my backyard. I don't look at people as colored or gay or whatever. I look at them as people. I look at them as their soul. So till society stops looking at that and blaming that, whether it be the lawyers or you and counsel or whatever, you have to, it doesn't matter what color they are or what their sexual preference is or whatever. If they're doing things that aren't correct, you have laws, you should be stopping it. Shame on you if you don't.
thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on the zoning bylaw? I'll ask a second time. Anyone else wanting to speak on the zoning bylaw? Yeah, come on forward.
Hi, I'm Harjit Sikhan, and I just want to know that if there is a map, bigger map or something, to be able to see what the consolidated zones are, because that's what I'm here for, and I just wanted to know, but I couldn't figure it out in that from the email that was sent to us and that. So am I the only one who didn't get it, or?
I'll refer your question through to Mr. Deming.
Yeah,
Thank you,
please.
Mr. Chair. Yes, on the city's project page, you'll find a PDF version of the maps, which is broken down into individual sections of the city. Additionally, there's also it's called an Esri story map. It was developed by our consultants from Dillon. On that, there's actually a virtual version of the zoning map with the proposed zones on there. So you're able to zoom in and out and search properties on there as well. So it's on the project page. If you'd like to leave your name and contact information, I'd be happy to email that to you directly
Sure.
as well.
So where do I leave my name?
Right there on the clipboard.
Just on the clipboard there.
On there?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else wishing to speak on the zoning bylaw? Anyone else wishing to speak on the zoning bylaw? Yeah, come on forward. Sorry.
My name is Doug Taylor. I don't have a trailer or anything, but my father used to have one up on Purdy Street. And he put 2 rows of patio slabs to back it in on at the east side of the building, east side of the house. It was fine there for all the time he was there. Nobody ever complained. My aunt and uncle up on Plaza Square had a big mobile home they bought because they were going to Florida in the winters. It was parked in the driveway. A few people objected at first about it blocking their view down the street, but it all settled and nothing was ever raised about it. So I don't know why now, in my opinion, we're trying to over-regulate our lives. And I think it's time to stop this over-regulating our lives. If I had a house and I had a trailer and I had it parked in the driveway, or like this one lady had a gravel spot put at the side of the house, if there's room at the side of the house, I would do something like that, the way my dad did. I don't think we need to continue this over-regulating just by length of trailer or whatever, and it's just, to me, too much. You know, let's let everybody live happily. Quit over-regulating us on stuff. It's getting just ridiculous how we're being over-regulated by bylaws and whatever. And I'd like to see it stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on the zoning bylaw? Anyone else wishing to speak on the zoning bylaw? And a third time, anyone wishing to speak on the zoning bylaw? Okay, seeing none, I have a resolution that the draft city zoning bylaw consolidation be referred to the regular planning advisory committee meeting for consideration. Moved by Councillor Alsop, second by Councillor Brown. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on to 4.2, notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for proposed amendment to zoning bylaw 3014, 366 Farnham Road, City of Belleville. Owners Gertzma Homes Limited. Applicant is RFA Planning Consultants Incorporated, and the file number is B-77-1198. If staff could present the application, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. The property is located on the west side of Farnham Road, south of Primrose Crescent, and north of Laurel Street. And the consent applications granted the approval to sever the rear portion of the property and add it to a surplus block from Heritage Park Phase 4 subdivision. This resulted in the creation of 3 new development parcels. The application proposes to amend the zoning of the property from rural residential RR zone to a low-density residential type 1 R117 zone for the severed parcel and a medium-density residential type 3 R32 zone with a holding symbol for the retained parcel. The holding symbol would require the municipal water and sanitary services and the reconstruction of Farnham Road prior to the redevelopment of the retained parcel. The official plan designation of the property is residential land use. At this time, staff have received no correspondence from the public regarding this application. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this application?
Members of the council, committee, good evening. My name is Titus Lee, and I'm a planner with RFA Planning Consultant. I will be presenting on this file this evening. May I find the presentation here? There we go. So as noted earlier, the property is at 366 Farnham Road, and our proposal is to rezone the site to an R3-2 zone and an R1-17 zone. The site is currently designated a residential land use according to the official plan, and it's zoned as rural residential, with surrounding land uses being high density, low density, and rural residential. The site also has an area of 0.45 hectares and fronts onto Farnham Road and Primrose Crescent with a lot depth of 89.1 meters. So there's been some work completed. We had a pre-consultation meeting in January of this year, and we've received a checklist of the required studies and reports to be done, all of which have been completed and the application was deemed complete in August of this year. So this rezoning is to be undertaken there was a previous consent for this property, and here's an excerpt from the decision letter that states that approval of the consent is to be subject to appropriate zoning relief for the proposed reduction in lot area for the retained parcel, and to rezone the severed parcel to match the zone of the abutting block to the west. Hence, we have proposed two zones, an R1-17 zone for the western portion and R3-2 with a holding symbol for the eastern portion. One of the impetus for this rezoning and the choice of an R3-2 zone is the Farnham Road reconstruction that has been planned for the road that gives access to this lot on the east side. This road is proposed to be reconstructed with municipal services to be extended along this road. In support of this rezoning, a functional servicing report was also conducted for the western portion of the property that demonstrates that the existing services located on the west side are available to service the three separate lots that are proposed to be zoned R1-17. The retained lot on the east side is to be zoned R3-2, which is larger in size than the neighboring rural residential lots and will continue to be serviced by private individual well and septic services until municipal services are extended along Farnham Road. A rezoning servicing report was undertaken for the eastern part of the property that demonstrates that the property can be serviced in accordance with the City of Belleville's design standards, specifications, and provincial standards. Calculated demand will be accommodated within the city's capacities with a future extension of services along Farnham Road. This calculation data was based on a theoretical maximum of 7 dwelling units that can be accommodated on the rezoned lot. Until then, the property is to be continued to be serviced by private individual well and septic services. And a septic review was undertaken for the existing well, as well as to prove that a replacement septic system can be installed under Section 8 of the Ontario Building Code. A traffic brief was conducted, which shows that lots to be rezoned R1-17 will front onto Cottonwood Drive, while the lots zone R3-2 with a holding symbol will not require traffic mitigation, as the daily vehicle trip generation is expected to be approximately 42 vehicles a day, and improvements are planned for the Farnham Road in the study area. A topographic survey and grading plan was undertaken for the western part of the site, which notes that there are no existing stormwater restrictions or drainage issues, and also illustrates the proposed grading plan, which will feature side yard swales around each of the three severed lots. This rezoning application also considers the provincial policy statement, which applies to all planning applications effective May 1st, 2020, and finds that the proposed rezoning is consistent with the 2020 PPS, as the lands are located within a defined settlement area, and the proposed zones will enable future development adjacent to existing built-up areas, which are appropriate for and efficiently use the infrastructure which is available or planned, and will or can accommodate an appropriate range of housing options and densities to meet the requirements of current and future residents. Our planning application has also considered the policies of the City of Belleville's official plan, which was adopted by City Council in 2021 and approved by the Ontario Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing in 2023. As you can see here on this map, the subject lands are designated residential land use, and a proposed rezoning is consistent with the official plan, as it recognizes the timing of the surrounding development and infrastructure upgrades. It is a form of infill intensification and is supported by technical reports and studies, as were noted earlier in this presentation. Our proposed rezoning has also considered the current Township of Thurlow zoning by law, which is still in place, and notes that the site will adhere to provisions of R3-2 zone, which is currently existing. And this is a flex zone that will allow for future single-family, semi-detached, duplex, or townhouse dwellings. While rezoning of the western portion of the site will match the zoning of the 3 abutting lots to the west and to the south, the R1-17, which is noted here on this map. And that minimum lot areas and frontages will be met, along with minimum yard widths, depths, and maximum lot coverages will be respected. The existing conditions and surrounding uses indicate no apparent compatibility impacts, and the rezoning is considered appropriate. So here's an outline of the proposed zones, along with the conditions of the current lot, showing that we meet the requirements for each of the scenarios. And so to summarize everything, I want to note that the proposed rezoning is a condition of a severance that has already been approved, and that the proposed R1-17 zone matches the zone of the 3 lots to the west, which were part of the condition. And the proposed R3-2 zone with the holding symbol is appropriate in anticipation of the extension of municipal services, and is supported by technical studies and reports and planning policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Any questions of committee members? Councillor Millette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Lee. Is this property, is this the location of a former small engine repair business garage to the right? I see my fellow committee members are nodding their heads vigorously, so. Okay, so it's no longer operating as a small engine repair place, is that correct?
I believe that the current uses are in accordance with the rural residential zone, which is in place.
Okay, yeah, because I see Andy Geertzman himself is the property owner now, so I don't think Andy was building small engines, so thanks very much.
Right. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. A question on the severed parcel from 366 Farnham. It indicates that those parcels will create 3 new residential lots fronting onto Cottonwood. But if I understand actually the very, very first page of your presentation, it appears that there were small lots there and that the severed parcel actually increases the size of the lots on the 3 lots on Cottonwood. Is that correct? Am I interpreting that correctly?
Yes, the severance is the severed portion of the lot is to benefit the 3 lots that are currently existing in the current R1-17 zone. And so portions of that severed lot will benefit each of the 3 lots to make up for the full area required.
And not to suggest anything, but if for any reason this property wasn't severed and redone, the existing portion of the lots on Cottonwood would not be sufficient to build multi-unit housing. Is that correct?
From what I understand, the lots had a holding symbol on them, and they were zoned in anticipation of this severance that would benefit those lands.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from committee members? No? Thank you, Mr. Lee. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the application? And a third time, anyone wishing to speak in favor of the application? Anyone wanting to speak in opposition of the application? Anyone wanting to speak in opposition of the application? And a third time, anyone wanting to speak in opposition to the application? Seeing none, I have a resolution that the Geertzman Homes Limited application B-77-1198 be referred to the regular Planning Advisory Committee meeting for consideration. Moved by Councillor Brown, second by Councillor Enright Miller. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. 4.3, notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for proposed amendment to zoning bylaw 10-245, 665B and 667A, B, and C, Dundas Street East, City of Belleville. Owner is Mackenzie Cairns, Paul Hounslow, and Jerry DeRocco. Applicant is Mackenzie Cairns. The file number is B-77-1199. If staff could present the application, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. The properties are located on the southeast corner of the Dundas Street East and Hague Road intersection, as well as directly east of the former Bakelite site. Each property is improved with a single detached dwelling, accommodated on private water and sanitary services. The application intends to recognize and permit the continuation of the existing uses by rezoning the properties from the current zoning of general industrial M2 zone and environmental control E zone to residential first density zone, R1 zone, and environmental control E zone that reflects the 100-year floodplain. The official plan designations of the property are residential land use and environmental protection. At this time, staff have received no correspondence from the public regarding this application. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this application? Anyone speaking in favor of the application? Third time, anyone speaking in favor of the application? Anyone speaking in opposition of the application? Anyone speaking opposing the application? And a third time, anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Seeing none, resolution of the Cairns Hounslow Duraco application B-77-1199 be referred to the regular Planning Advisory Committee meeting for consideration. Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Enright Miller. All in favor? That's carried. Motion to adjourn this portion of the meeting. Councillor Alsop, Councillor Enright Miller. All in favor? Carried. Just give me a second here to switch agendas. All right, moving on to the Plan Advisory Committee. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Seeing none, reading and confirmation of the minutes, that the minutes of the City Council Planning Committee meeting and Planning Advisory Committee meeting held on August 8, 2023 be approved. Moved by Councillor Wright Miller, seconded by Mr. Baltutis. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. No deputation. Correspondence? Yeah. Can I get a motion to receive the correspondence in the clerk's office? Councillor Alsop, Mr. Jennings, all in favor? That's carried. Moving on for referrals from the public meeting. 6.1, notice of introductory public meeting, new draft consolidated zoning bylaw, City of Belleville. File number is the consolidated zoning bylaw. Resolution is that report number PP-2023-42 dated September 5th, 2023 regarding the introductory public meeting for the new draft consolidated zoning bylaw, City of Belleville be received as information, and that staff report back at such time as input from the public, commenting agencies and municipal departments has been received, assessed, and addressed to the satisfaction of the Engineering and Development Services Department. Moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Alsop. Questions or comments? Councillor Millett.
Thank you, Chair. It's more of a comment. I'm heartened to see that some of the people are still here from the earlier referral. I think it's a bit of an eye-opener for a lot of us that what with some of the very meaty and hefty items that are included in this bylaw, everything from rooming houses to the scope and breadth of what some of the serious issues are in that, and nothing at all to belittle the concerns of some of the people who were here tonight, but to see, you know, the hot button issue that really resonates is trailers and boats. I was surprised we didn't have chicken people here tonight. We didn't have any of the backyard hen folks, and it was raised that where do we come up with the numbers? Well, I can assure some of the people listening that the numbers that we come up with in these, you know, for instance, if you look into the issues that are included in some of the other items, and I referred to backyard hens, it's recommending 4, not 5, not 3, 4 hens. Those are the kinds of things that, you know, there's studies and other municipalities have found that flocks any larger than that, so 4 seems like a reasonable number. And when we get into issues of boat and trailer sizes, I think there's a lot to be said for some of these arguments that lot and driveway sizes, variable provisions, in various areas of the city. There's a lot to be said for that. So I commend some of the people that spoke tonight passionately about their pastime, but I have to say I'm a little surprised that it was boats and trailers that really resonated. But suffice to say that we are listening, and I think by the time, and it's going to be a little bit yet, once this reaches council, you're going to see that we were in fact listening, and there very well likely will be some changes to some of these things. So thanks again to the public for being engaged, and that's what this process is all about.
Other questions or comments? Okay, I just want to jump on that just briefly and say that, you know, as staff reviews the comments and the submissions from the public, that property size really does matter. And using, and it was mentioned by one resident tonight, a member of the public, that using a new subdivision driveway or lot as the minimum standard, I think is unreasonable when compared to other areas of the city. If you're fortunate enough to have a 100-foot driveway, for example, even in the urban zone, those do exist. And being able to store something larger than what's proposed in the zoning bylaw seems reasonable when it's not obstructing other things. You know, obviously, size of an RV and a boat certainly matters. As we call them, postage stamp lots, driveways side by side. You know, basically, you can't discern one property from another. So obviously, having storage like that is a little excessive. But knowing what I know about this city and many of the matured areas of the city that weren't subject to today's intensification when it comes to zoning bylaws and building, etc., that there needs to be provisions that allow for some reasonableness. So I think rather than looking at one standard to fit today's planning standard, if you will, size of the lot, size of the driveway in comparison to what's being stored there seems reasonable. As was mentioned in the draft bylaw, there's no seasonal restrictions, so it can be there year-round, which is good, and that satisfied, I think, some of the public concern about off-season storage and accessibility. I just want to talk a little bit too about the R2 zone and the permitting of different residential uses. I think this is a great idea. The comment in the staff report says developers may build subdivisions with various residential uses as the market dictates. And boy, would it be nice if the market actually dictated the development versus the developer dictating the market. But that's maybe a conversation for another day. The other thing, and it was kind of a little bit alluded to during the public, and I see that it's included in this draft, is a Loyalist College zone that allows some flexibility with regards to building. And I know that here at committee, but also at council, I speak a lot about building stats and what the developers are doing in terms of growing our city and providing the stock that we need in housing. Loyalist College needs to step up. They have a record revenue stream now, and the amount of students that are coming into this area are putting a significant strain on an already existing housing strain. That's not the students' fault, that's the college fault. They're attracting the residents and the students here, but they don't have the student residents to help. And to extend a little bit on the comment that was made from a member of the public, the rooming house issue has been suggested that we get into a licensing provision. I think that is an excellent idea that I think council will have to commit to down the road in another process, simply to ensure that those students that are coming into our community have a safe place to live that meets all the standards and can't be taken advantage of simply for a dollar. And so it's good that we have those suggested Loyalist College provisions. They need to start building student residents. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Jennings.
Thank you. Through the chair, I think to Thomas probably. I just wanted some clarification on the minimum front yard setbacks. It seems to be 7.5 meters consistently, but then there are some exceptions allowed, where we've now moved it back down to the 6 meters. So I'm concerned that we even have the 6 meter option at all, because as we've been seeing, the developers will request the 6 meter, often get it, and I think, as we all know, the average car is more than 6 meters long. If we're trying to attract tradespeople and workers, a pickup truck is almost 7 meters long. So they won't be able to park in their own driveway in a lot of these newer neighborhoods where there's just no room on the streets because it's all driveways. So I'm concerned at even leaving any possibility of a 6 meter setback on a house as a minimum of 7.5 should be the minimum is my question, I guess. Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. So the setbacks were developed through a review of all our existing zones. So, for example, the existing R4 zone, that's a common zone in a lot of the urban area of Belleville's, the front yard setback's actually 3.6 meters, which is quite less. These specific requirements, when we started reviewing the zones, and perhaps Rory might be able to speak a little bit better on this because this was Dylan's exercise, but it was based on part of merging the zones and creating them as simple as possible. So being lenient when we were looking at the merging of the zones. So what was the most flexible option? What presented the best, or the path of least resistance, I would say, in that respect. But perhaps on why 6 was chosen, I'd maybe refer that to Dylan on this one.
Thanks, Tom. If I could kindly request specifically which zone was it again, please?
Well, at a quick glance, I think
If you could just activate your mic again, sir.
Yeah, R1, I think R1, 2, and 3 all have standard 7.5 setback, but then they all have exceptions, which will allow for 6 meter setback, like R1-1, 3, subscript 3, for example.
Right. So those exceptions are carry forwards from existing recent zoning bylaw amendments that are designed to grandfather existing on-the-ground development so that they don't accidentally become non-compliant with the zoning as a result of a new zoning bylaw coming forward. So the ones that you see there are the beginning. As we work towards finalizing it, there's a number of zoning bylaw amendments that committee will have approved in the passage of time, and we want to grandfather some of those other recent decisions into this new zoning bylaw so those decisions don't evaporate by virtue of a new zoning bylaw coming into force. So those exceptions are really designed for what's actually already built and sitting there right now.
Oh, okay. So there's no way that somebody could try to get that exception afterwards. It's only grandfathered in subdivisions. Okay, great. I had another question related to, I can't find it specifically, but there was some language around whether it was a double wide driveway or a single driveway, and that the length could be shortened if it was a double wide driveway. Does that make any sense to you? I think it was a very similar concern where if I think you'd suggested that if they were having a double garage, they wouldn't need as long of a driveway because they've got 2 side-by-sides. I would argue that that's not actually a good idea because then you'll have 2 spots that nobody can use as opposed to 1. Through you, Mr. Chair. We'll review and we'll get back to you on that. Good. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Enright Miller.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I just wanted to reiterate what my colleagues have said, and for such a large document to have this hot button item, and I think we've heard all the comments, and we appreciate everybody that's come out to speak to it today and taken the time, and just to let everyone know that you have been heard, and I'm sure we will have lots of discussion about it and have something new come through. Thank you.
Ms. Van Dyke.
Thank you. Just in regards to the rooming houses, I guess I'm just requesting that there needs to be proper wording and provisions made in the bylaw to protect our students, or more specifically our international students who are coming to study, who are dreaming for a better future, that we need to be better hosts. And so some type of wording, something in this bylaw so that we are protecting them. As a parent, I couldn't imagine sending my own child. I just dropped one off at university, at school this past weekend. I couldn't imagine dropping them off in another country and thinking that they'd be treated any differently. And I do reiterate international students, because we're seeing this as an issue with our international students, not necessarily our Canadian local students, because I think there's a different standard of living. And I don't think that there should be any different standard of living.
Thank you for that. The actual attachment 15 in the agenda has a discussion on rooming houses, and what's being suggested that it's not included in the zoning bylaw, but it'd be a separate process, and there would be through licensing, and that would provide for properties to register with the city, and then provides the opportunity for regular oversight, including building code, fire code, etc. So it'll be a separate process, but it is something that is on the radar. Staff, do you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only thing I would add to that is the general direction of modern zoning bylaws. And again, this is coming from the Ontario Human Rights Commission, is to remove any kind of zoning related around the person or the user of the use. So zoning should be focused on the use and not the user. That's the kind of catchphrase that they use. So while it's a very important point that you made there, the zoning bylaw really shouldn't be creating any rules specific on the person. And that's why that report there was included in my report to you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So does the zoning provide any protections in regards to how it's used, though? So yes, it's a rooming house, but are we overcrowding it? And I think that goes under the licensing that you were talking about, correct? So that's, I'm in full support of that, if that's the direction we're going in.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. The zoning bylaw puts regulations on it, but essentially, a house is a house. It doesn't matter who's living in there, and from a zoning perspective and a use perspective, not necessarily the number of people. For example, you could have a large family, right? We can't control how many family members you have living there. Just like we have it's an incredibly difficult challenge to enforce, if people are related or if they're unrelated individuals living there. And that's part of what the Human Rights Commission is trying to get at. The zoning may not be the right way, but the Ontario Fire Code and Building Code both regulate rooming houses, and they have those provisions in and that's why Dylan suggested licensing.
Yep. Any other questions or comments? I just want to also say thank you to staff for the work that they've done to get to this point. This is the first time that the committee's actually reviewed it in depth and had an opportunity to comment on it. So there's a lot of work that's been done behind the scenes. And it's quite actually significant when you look at it that we've gone through an official plan exercise, and then now to get to the zoning bylaw. These are significant strides in our community, particularly as it relates to changing some of the zoning definitions and streamlining them a bit. And there's a theme there in terms of making it easier for builders to build. And so again, here's another hurdle that we're removing, but I want to thank staff and certainly our consultants as well, our contract staff for helping. If there's no other comments, I got a resolution on the floor. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on to 6.2, notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for proposed amendment to zoning bylaw 3014, 366 Farnham Road, City of Belleville. Owners Gertzma Homes Limited. Applicant is RFA Planning Consultants Incorporated. File number is B-77-1198. Resolution is that report number PP-2023-40 dated September 5th, 2023 regarding notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for proposed amendment to zoning bylaw number 3014 as amended, 366 Farnham Road, City of Belleville, County of Hastings be received as information, and that staff report back at such time as input from the public, commenting agencies and municipal departments has been received, assessed, and addressed to the satisfaction of the Engineering and Development Services Department. Moved by Councillor Alsop, second by Mr. Jennings. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. 6.3, notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for proposed amendment to zoning bylaw 10245, 665B, and 667A, B, and C, Dundas Street East, City of Belleville. Owners Mackenzie Cairns, Paul Hounslow, and Jerry DeRocco. Applicant is Mackenzie Cairns. 1199. Resolution reads that report number PP-2023-41 dated September 5th, 2023 regarding notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for proposed amendment to zoning bylaw number 10245 as amended, 665B and 667A, B, and C, Dundas Street East, City of Belleville, County of Hastings be received as information, and that staff report back at such time as input from the public, commenting agencies, and municipal departments has been received, assessed, and addressed to the satisfaction of the Engineering Development Services Department. Moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Mr. Baltutis. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. There's no reports tonight. Information matters. Resolution that the official plan zoning bylaw amendment monitoring report to September 5th, 2023 be received. Mr. Baltutis, Mr. Jennings, any questions on that report? Councillor Millette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's just an observation. I'm happy to see the descriptive nature of the report and the fact that we're getting, and I think it's a bit of an eye-opener if anybody who's watching from home cares to look at the link on the city's agenda website on this civic web. They can see where some of these developments are that have been approved, and some of them are, for whatever reason, have been withdrawn, either closed, waiting for more information. But there's an awful lot of development listed here, and it's good to see that it's presented in such a detailed manner.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Any general business? Seeing none, can I get a motion to adjourn? Councillor Alsop, Councillor Brown, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.